Well, brethren, as we know, each day that goes on, we realize we're getting older. I know I find that for myself every day as I look at the clock and see that, wow, it went fast already. It's been a whole 2 minutes have gone by. So time goes on pretty quickly. But as the time goes on, we see that more and more words have changed that we never realized before, that their meanings are not the same as years ago. Now, not just a couple of years ago. It could go back many years that things like this have been changing with meanings of words. Even words and things like that relate to family. Who understands families today? It's not quite as clear as it was. Or marriages. How many understand marriages? In other words, how they interact together. Or even, should they be even married together? Is that even allowable today in where we are? So today, with the technology that we have, with the internet, computers, people are communicating with each other in many different ways. Even with telephones, where we used to just call somebody for something, now you can just text them all day long about different things. One popular thing that we see in this technology is that of Facebook. And if you want to get involved with others on that Facebook, you want to get involved with them, you have to be considered a friend of you. That's who you are when you're on Facebook. You're a friend you. In order to get on their site and join them and communicate, to share your personal information with others on that website, that particular one that you're joining onto, where they may have another 250 or 300 people that are on that thing getting all this information that they're getting to hear from other people as their friends. Lots of friends. The question is, what is a friend today? Have we lost the meaning of what that word friend that it means, that it has a broad meaning to it, broader than we've ever maybe thought about? Now, there are synonyms to that word, friend, and they include things like an associate, an acquaintance, a comrade, a companion, a chum, a partner, a buddy, a pal. If you're from New York, it might be a Ogumba, if you remember those things. So all words that we use to associate like this are being used for friends that we have. Now, the definition of a friend is one who is attached to another by affection. Attached to someone by affection. It's more than just light-hearted things to be a friend. It's not just, like they said, a social acquaintance, a comrade, a companion. It's more than that. It's one who has respect and loyalty to one another, which lead him to desire a relationship with another person. Develop a relationship with them, and to seek to promote that person's happiness and prosperity and well-being. So there's a lot more than just the simple meaning of the word, where you can get on a website with Facebook with another 250 people that you don't know, but yet you're all friends. Do they understand what it is? It's one who is not hostile, someone who is not always arguing or angry. They have similar interests together. That's part of their friendship. And it could start out as an associate in a lighthearted way, or again, to have a more deeper meaning and feeling to each other. A true friendship is a noble and victorious attachment with one another. A noble, victorious attachment, springing from a pure source with respect. Coming from a pure source. We didn't even realize that we'd have this when we met someone and then we became friends with them. It means joining together through agreement, being friends. They agree with things, on board with things. So how well do we understand the meaning of friendship? Let's see today, how do we apply this godly principle to have friendship with God and his people? And the title of the sermon today is going to be Becoming a Friend of God. So as we draw with each other closer to Christ, return to his return, the reality of God's friendship is becoming a rarity. It's not as popular as God would want us to see it as. Even with some within the church of God, it's not as important as it used to be, that they see that importance as we draw closer to Christ's return. People we thought were friends for years, today, they don't even speak to each other. Or maybe they can't speak to each other. They're not allowed to speak to each other for some reason. Or to each other to contact them for things about something that they want to know. The lack of godly friendship is not limited, brethren, to the world. Not limited to the world. Friendship is not limited just to the world. Yet understanding this quality is vital to our relationship with God and his Son. Even though it's losing its importance as time goes on, year by year, God wants us to see that there's an important information, a part of it. This wording of friendship relates to us as concerned on a spiritual plane. Again, it's not just saying hello to somebody at the supermarket that you see them every time you go there. It's realizing that there's more of a spiritual importance to this. Let's turn over to Matthew chapter 24. Unfortunately, brethren, this lack of true friendship is further proof of Christ's prophecy of the end time, what it's going to be like when he returns. He told us this was going to be happening. Matthew 24 and verse 12. And he says here concerning the end time, he says, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold, meaning it won't be seen. It won't be seen anymore. Now that love of many waxing cold, that word love there means, the original wording is that agape love. It's godly love. This is not just social friendship, love kind of friendship that you have with somebody. It's godly love, a deeper, important love. And that's going to wax cold as time goes on. Not with many, but some shall wax cold. That means there'll be some within his church, the church of God, that he has called people that will be following this way in their life. And again, while it may be referring to the end-time church in many ways, because it's the ones who have that agape love, it doesn't mean that we should give in to this mindset ourselves. We need to be careful of what we're seeing here. What does Christ want us to see here about this importance? What does the Bible tell us about what a friend is to be like? How we are to act with each other, how we are to live with each other. And the book of Proverbs has many scriptures relating to friendships, relationships, how we act with one another, how we live together. The book of Proverbs has many things. Let's turn to Proverbs chapter 14. Proverbs chapter 14. We're going to see here that we're going to be showing here in Proverbs 14, verse 20, shows that many who claim to be friends have ulterior motives, meaning they're not really friends. Proverbs 14, verse 20. It says, the poor is hated even unto his own neighbor. But the rich has many friends. So the rich have many friends, but the poor, they're hated by their own neighbors. Now we know that being rich is very exciting to people. Oh, wow, you want to have a friend? You don't want a poor friend. You want somebody who's rich, who has a lot of things that maybe you can get along with, share with them. An example would be a guy who wins a lottery, and maybe he won $50 million on it, but he's really ready to hide it. He doesn't want to let anybody know, any of his friends or anybody to know yet that he won $50 million. He doesn't want to put out on the news, his name on the TV, that he won $50 million because he was concerned that his doorbell is going to be ringing every 10 minutes. He's going to be getting phone calls, emails, texts from everybody who ever heard his name or knows of him in some way, because now they want to be his close friends because he's rich. The rich man has many friends. Many people make friends for convenience. That's why God wants us to make sure we understand the importance of what this is about. How will they affect, or how will they benefit, rather, from this relationship, this friendship? Proverbs 19, verse 4. Let's look there. Yeah. Proverbs 19, verse 4. It says, wealth attracts many friends. Even the closest friend of the poor person deserts them. Even the closest friend of the poor person will desert them. Verse 6, many curry favor with a ruler, and everyone is the friend of one who gives gifts. So we hear God is making it clear for us to see that we got to be careful. You know, it's not about what people are going to get from other people. It's what they're the importance of it. Verse 7, the poor are shunned by all their relatives. How much more do their friends avoid them as well as the others that were doing this? Their own friends, their relatives are deserting them. Though the poor pursue them with pleading, they are nowhere to be found. So even though they're asking for help, the poor, they're looking to their friends, they're not getting any help. They're being ignored. It's not what they can give, but what they can get from it. Not everyone who says they are a friend truly is one. Sometimes a friend will give you a glass of water to keep you nice and like this one. Oh, that's better. Thank you. Not everyone who says they are our friend truly is one. But God warns us to be careful who we consider friends. Or are we being friends ourselves? We don't want to get negative how people are not friends, but are we being friends? Are they going to see us in the way we're concerned about others? We're told to be careful who we associate with. Let's turn again over to Proverbs chapter 16. God tells us things that destroy friendships. Proverbs 16, verse 28. It says, a perverse man spreads quarrels, and a whisperer, meaning a gossiper, separates best friends. If someone comes to tell us about someone else, brethren, we need to be careful not to befriend them because they will tell others about you as well. Are these friends that they're gossiping about others that you thought were their friends? They were friends with these people, and now they're telling you information about them that is negative about them? And be careful that we are not associating with people like that are gossipers, because they're going to do the same thing to us as well. God warns us to be careful who we consider our friends. Proverbs 13. See, wrong friends, brethren, can do much harm having this kind of mindset. Proverbs 13, verse 20. It says, he that walks with wise men shall be wise. But a companion or a friend of fools, meaning an arrogant one, a friend of fools shall be destroyed. We are known by the company that we keep. We like to be with those that associate. We'll be like those that we associate and be destroyed. We have to look at, are we hanging with friends that are wise, or are we looking to other people that are fools and arrogant? Is that who we're associating with? Proverbs 22, verse 24. That last verse we were reading, I just want to finish that more clearly. He says, we are known by the company that we keep, and we'll be like those that we associate to be destroyed. So again, God is warning us what to be careful with and who we're with. Proverbs 22, verse 24. He says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man you shall not go. Verse 25. Lest you learn his ways and get a snare or a trap unto yourself or your soul. So people think it's okay to be angry. So if my friend is angry, then I can be angry as well. He says, be careful you don't do that, lest you become like him and get trapped in that same way of being angry, easily angry. So we can be negatively influenced by others and how we think are friends. Now, we're going to turn to 2 Samuel chapter 13, but maybe before we leave there, you might want to put a little ribbon on the book of Proverbs, or maybe a paper clip on the top of the page or something, because there are so many things in Proverbs that we'll be going back to again. It'll be easier to get back to it. But 2 Samuel chapter 13, let's turn there. We'll look at an example of one so-called friend and what his influence was and what it helped to produce for that person. So-called friend. 2 Samuel 13, verse 1. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister, a beautiful sister, whose name was Tamar. And Ammon, the son of David, loved her. And Ammon was so vexed that he felt sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. He was so full of lust and desire to want her for himself because she was a virgin. And Ammon thought it was hard for him to do anything like this to her because, he couldn't have this kind of relationship with her. It was his sister. So he knew in his back of his mind that this was not something that he should do, but it was bothering him because he had such a lust for her. Verse 3. But Ammon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shemaiah, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very subtle man, as the King James reads it. That word means very cunning or shrewd or a wise guy. This was his friend. Verse 4, and he said unto him, why are you, being the king's son, so lean, or meaning so depressed, from day to day? Will you not tell me? What's going on? And Ammon said to him, I love Tamar, my brother, Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, well, listen, lay down your bed, make yourself sick, and when your father comes to see you, just tell him, I pray for my sister Tamar to come to give me meat and dress the meat in my sight, so that I might see and eat at her hand. She can be there with me real close to give me something to enjoy. Verse 6, and Ammon lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Ammon said unto the king, I pray you, let Tamar, my sister, come, make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I might eat at her hand. Eventually, after this happened, she came to the room, and what happened? He molested her. And his friend gave him some wonderful advice on how to get what you wanted. Even though he knew this wasn't something he should have done, his friend told him, here's how you want to get it done. So when he was done with her, after he had this relationship with her now, he wanted nothing to do with her anymore. From that point on, he just hated her. Her life changed. Things ruined for her. This unwise counsel even cost him his own life when his brother Absalom had him killed for what he did to his sister. So Jonadab, brethren, was not a friend. So we have to be careful. What kind of friends do we have that they understand the right things and the wrong things? Let's go back again to the book of Proverbs, chapter 27. Proverbs 27. God tells us here what a friend should do. Proverbs 27, verse 5. It says, open rebuke or correction is better than secret or hidden love. So open rebuke or correction for people is better than keeping how you feel about them inside. You need to just make sure you open it up. Verse 6, faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So even though those faithful words, meaning something that will be giving you some correction, may sound hurtful because they're wounds, but yet the kisses of an enemy, someone who's so nice to you, but he's not really caring for you. He's not going to tell you what you need to know like Jonadab did. A true friend will tell them what they need to hear. If one is going in a wrong direction, you should let them know that they are in danger and that you're not about to go along with them where they're headed. Jonadab did not do that. He didn't tell him, no, are you crazy? You're lusting for this woman. She's a beautiful girl. She's your sister. And you want to do this? He didn't do that. Let them know that they're in danger of going in a wrong direction. So we are to set the way to be going. A friend should set the way for his friend to be going. Set the tone of what should be and not what you shouldn't do. Set the right tone. If they shouldn't listen or expect you to go along with them, they truly are not your friends, and they will bring you down if they don't listen or expect you to go along with them. We have to be careful that we're getting friends that are going to give us good advice and help. Verse 9 in chapter 27, he says, ointment and perfume rejoice the heart, and so does sweetness of a man's friend by heavy or hearty counsel. And the NIV reads that as heartful advice. Ointment and perfume is like a man's friend giving him heartful advice because he is truly concerned about him. Turn over to Hebrews chapter 10. Again, a true friend will encourage positive growth in others. Hebrews 10 and verse 23. Paul says here, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, meaning hold fast what we believe in and don't give in to anything. Don't go back and forth in what we're doing. For he says, for he is faithful that promised. God is faithful with his promises. Verse 24, let us consider our relationship with one another to encourage, meaning to encourage unto love and good works. So that's what we're to be doing, encouraging people to good works. Now, there can be no friendship without confidence and no confidence without integrity. Now, integrity is someone who adheres to moral and ethical principles, meaning soundness of moral character and honesty. So we need to be careful. We need to have integrity, not just be associating with someone who has it, but we want to be able to have integrity so that they will know that they have a friend with integrity. And what we want to be looking for in others as ourselves, not just to them, but ourselves as well. The first law of friendship, brethren, is sincerity. It means to join together through agreement, that we are to be sincere in how we're relating with people, not just using words, not just being there, not just delivering a gift or something, but having it to be sincere from the heart. Turn to Psalm 55. We're going to see here that there are times when our friends will disappoint us. We want to see here, brethren, that we don't want to be following these negative examples. Psalm 55 in verse 12. Psalm 55 in verse 12. I'm reading from the God's Word Bible. It says, if an enemy has insulted me, then I could bear it. If someone who hated me has attacked me, then I could hide it from him. So he's letting him know. He says, if something negative happens, I could bear it. If someone hates me, then I could hide from him. He says, verse 13, he says, but it's you, my companion, my best friend, one who I knew so well. You betrayed me. We used to talk to each other in complete confidence and walk in God's house with festival crowds. We even worshiped together before God at services, at the feast, or wherever. He says, yet you betrayed me. So there is nothing more disappointing, brethren, in a relationship than that of betrayal. Very sad. How many of us have experienced this or gone through it in the days of our lives, whether before the church or after, during the church? How many of us went through that? Where we thought they were our friends. And what happens? We know Jesus Christ himself was betrayed by a friend. Someone he said, used the term, was his friend. He betrayed him. So while we can't control the actions of others, it's important for us to understand how important loyalty is in our relationship with others. What are we doing that is our part of being a friend? So we need to be sure that we are keeping our friendships or family relations pure and dedicated in what we're doing. Turn to Micah chapter 7. Micah chapter 7. Not one that's as easily opened up to in your Bible, unless you have those little apps on your phone. Micah chapter 7 and verse 5, it says, trust you not in a friend, put not confidence in a companion. He says, keep the doors of your mouth from her that lies in your bosom. For the son dishonors the father, the daughter rises against her mother, the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies are in the members of his own household. Verse 7, he says, therefore I will look unto the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation, for he will hear me. So he's saying here that there are going to be negative things happening in our relationships, whether it's family or friends. He says, don't trust them in somebody, because eventually they may disappoint you in that way. So we don't want to just look at somebody who we don't know has that integrity in his life as well. But no matter what is going on, he's showing us here that we need to know that God is always there to hear us. Again, during Micah's time, there were few that could be trusted. And the more that we drift from God and leave his principles, the less trustworthy we will be as friends and family members. No matter how true a friend can be, God is the one that we have to depend on for everything. Let's go back to your little strip in the Bible there in Proverbs 18. Proverbs chapter 18 says, a man that has friends must show himself friendly. And there is a friend that sticks together that's closer than a brother. A man that has friends must show himself friendly. Now, while this is a very valid principle that must be followed, in order to be a friend of somebody, we must show ourselves to be friendly. That's very true. Very good wording here in the King James. And you can't be friends with someone if you don't show yourself friendly. And being outgoing opens the door for people to want to get familiar and develop a relationship where we show interest to others. But let's notice something here. The original Hebrew in this Proverbs 18, verse 24, is not really clear. The word friendly used there is in the Hebrew 7489, and it means who breaks in pieces. A friend that breaks in pieces, meaning wicked or evil. And it's used 98 times, that word, 7489. And every other translation of this verse reads similar to the one I'm going to read now. There's only one that reads that way is the King James Version. All the other versions read it this way in Proverbs 18, verse 24. It says that there are friends who destroy each other, but a real friend, that means 157, not the other word. The real friend, Ahab means love, sticks closer than a brother. So one who has loving, caring, bonding relationship. A loving, caring, bonding relationship. So it says here that there are friends who will destroy others, but a true friend, meaning one who has love, sticks closer than a brother. So while the other way in the King James is good to read, if you want to be friends, you have to show yourself friendly. But he's also showing here that it's not that a real friend has love and sticks together like a brother, like God was with Abraham. And we'll see that coming up. So even though we may be friends with people on Facebook, only true friends can be trusted to keep confidence with things that we share with others. Turn to 1 Samuel chapter 18. 1 Samuel chapter 18, we're going to see here an example of a close, good relationship between two people. 1 Samuel chapter 18, beginning in verse 1. It says, and it came to pass when he, David, had made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan, Saul's son, was knit, or meaning bonded, with David. And Jonathan loved him as himself. And Saul took him that day and would not let him go anymore to his father's house. So he wasn't allowed to be there anymore. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved. That means that 157 word there again, because he loved him as himself. Verse 4. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe and was upon him and gave it to David and his garments, even to his sword, to his bow, and to his girdle. So he gave him all these things that he had on. It wasn't just a gift that he was giving him some nice things to have. It says, explaining this, it means removing the robe was a symbol of the Israelite kingdom, because he was in effect transferring the robe, the kingdom, the throne of Jonathan that he would have had when his father died, to David. Now in Isaiah 15, we won't turn there, but in Isaiah 15, we see here that Samuel stripped Saul of his garments so that he would be no more king. He lost his position as the king when Samuel had stripped him of his robe. So now here we see the same thing. When Jonathan knew that when his father died, he was going to become king, he says, no, David will be king because I'm going to give him my robe and these other garments that he can put on to realize that I acknowledge him as king. Now, as David's popularity grew, Saul became more hateful of him and went on. And Jonathan's relationship with his father was now in jeopardy because of what he was doing. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Let's notice more about this friendship. 1 Samuel chapter 20, verse 12. Then Jonathan told David, I promise by the Lord, the God of Israel, that by this time tomorrow, or maybe the next day at the latest, I will talk to my father and let you know at once how he feels about you. If he speaks favorably about you, I will let you know. But if he's angry and wants to kill you, he says, may the Lord strike me and even kill me if I don't warn you so that you can escape from my father and live. May the Lord be with you as he used to be with my father. Verse 14, and may you treat me with the faithful love for the Lord as long as I live. But if I die, in verse 15, treat my family with faithful love, even when the Lord destroys all your enemies from the face of the earth. Verse 16, so Jonathan made a solemn pact with David, saying, may the Lord destroy all your enemies. And Jonathan made David reaffirm his vow of friendship again. And Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. So Jonathan literally put his life on the line when his father would try to kill him with a spear later on for defending David. That's how much he was going to put his life on the line for David, let him know. Chapter 23 and verse 15. Chapter 23 and verse 15. And David saw that Saul was come out to seek his life, and David was in the wilderness of Ziphah in a wood. And Jonathan, Saul's son, arose and went to David in the wood and strengthened his hand in God. And he said unto him, fear not, David, for the hand of Saul my father shall not find you. And you shall be king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. And that also my father knows about this. Verse 18. And they two made a covenant before the Lord, and David abode in the wood, and Jonathan went to his house. So we don't, at this point, after this, we don't see any other time of them together. But we see here, self-sacrifice was willing to be made for his friend. 2 Samuel chapter 1. 2 Samuel 1, verses 17 to 27. We're not going to read that, of course, but David wrote a song of lamentation for Jonathan and David. But we'll read in one verse, 2 Samuel 1, verse 26. David says, I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. Very pleasant have you been unto me. Your love to me was wonderful, passing the love of women. He says, our love for each other was even more than that for a wife or for a woman. As we read earlier, it sticks closer together than a brother. So David mourned over the loss of Jonathan when he eventually died with his father in battle. David later honored Jonathan when he took Jonathan's son, who had a disablement in his body. David took him to live with him in his house, took care of him every day for dinner, made his house be like he was part of the family there. So we've seen the warnings of shallow, meaningless friendships and how important a true friendship is if we sincerely are concerned for the other person, not ourselves. And that real friend is closer than a brother. Now, there are some mentioned in the Bible as being special in their relationship with God, and we know about that, like Moses in Exodus chapter 33. We don't have to turn there. But the Lord spoke to Moses face to face as a man that speaks to his friend. He talked to him like a friend. And then of David, Acts chapter 13, verse 21, it says, afterward that they desired a king, God gave them to Saul, the son of Cis, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. In verse 22, it says, and when he had removed him, he raised up them David to be their king, whom he also gave to destroy, and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, which shall also fulfill my will. So we see here, even David was considered a man after God's own heart. A good, close relationship. So God gave a nice testimony about David, and we see about Moses' background. But again, there are different levels of meanings of friendship. There is an association that a friendship can be more loyal to each other. And there's one that includes not associating together and loyalty. But also, we're to have love that was similar to David and Jonathan. Let's turn over to 2 Chronicles. Let's look at an example here of the story about what God says about Abraham. Let's see more about that now. 2 Chronicles chapter 20. Notice what God says here about Abraham. 2 Chronicles 20, verse 7, he says, "Are not you our God who did drive out the inhabitants of the land before your people and gave unto your seed of Abraham your friend forever?" Now he gave of his seed forever. That was going to be coming from him, of the seed. Now just Abraham's seed here, not just his seed, but his friend was mentioned. Now he didn't use that other term like that with Moses or David in the same way. But in Isaiah 41 in verse 8, Isaiah 41 in verse 8, again it says, "But you, Israel, are my servant, Jacob whom I have chosen, the seed of Abraham, my friend." So again here we see that term of being used as the friend, not just the seed, but the friend. Now, it's not like God was saying here, well, this is going to be written in the book, and it's going to say the seed of Abraham, my friend. The book is going to be so thick, maybe I can shorten the book a little and leave that part, the seed, out, okay? So just leave the seed in, don't have to mention about being the friend. But the word friend here is used in the Old Testament, speaking of Abraham again, as that number 157, Hab or Ahab. And it's used only 4 times in the Old Testament for a friend. 4 times that word is used in that original wording as love. Other times used as love 200 times. The word love, that word Ahab, is used as love 200 times, but it's only used 4 times for a friend. But the root of it is love. So it's used 4 times referencing to have an affection or love for. So how did God view Abraham? He had a love for him. That friendship was a love, a deep, special relationship that he had. Let's go back to Genesis chapter 12. Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1. "Now the Lord said unto Abram, Get you out of your country and from your kindred and from your father's house unto a land that I will show you, and I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless you, curse them that curse you, and in you all families of the earth shall be blessed because of what you're going to be doing. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and he went with Lot, and Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. Now again, he didn't take a train. He didn't fly out with a plane. He didn't take an Uber driver to get him out there. He departed and went, however, whether it was walking or riding a horse, he went out there. And he didn't debate with God in any way about this. He didn't say, well, God, I'm 75 years old. I'm going to leave my family. I got all my different things that I've had all these years, all the money I've made, the investments I've had here, and now I got to travel somewhere. He didn't do that. What did he do? He just left. He followed his instruction. Now, the historian, I don't know if you're familiar with the historian Josephus, but Josephus describes Abram as a person of great sagacity. Sagacity. Now, I'm sure you know what the meaning of that is, right? Okay, well, if not, I'll let you know. It means being discerning, sound in judgment, and wisdom. Josephus saw him here as someone who had wisdom. He had foresight, discernment, or he was keen in his perception and the ability to make good judgments in his life. And he goes on and continues in his book, and he says, for understanding all things and persuading his hearers and not mistaking in his opinions. He knew what he was saying because he heard it from God. He began to have higher notions of virtue than others, and he determined to renew and change the opinion of all men concerning God, being the one true God. So what he was going to be bringing out for all his descendants was going to be bringing out the truth of God over time. So this wasn't someone who God just picked out of the thin air. He didn't say, well, who will I find to do this? Let me see. He was someone who came out of the world of Nimrod after the flood, a terrible time. And in the book of Joshua, chapter 24, he talks about, it says, Terah and the family, Terah was his father, Abram's father. Terah and his family served other gods. But yet God knew the response that he was going to get from Abraham. He wasn't following his father and his family. He wasn't following Nimrod. He knew God. And God says, he is the one that I will be using to do this. He was loyal and full of integrity. So what are the things that Abraham had to show that he was a friend of God? Turn to Hebrews chapter 11. One thing is that faith is one element that made him a friend of God. Faith. Hebrews 11, verse 8. It says it right here. By faith, Abraham, when he was called to go out to the place which he should after received for inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing where he went. He didn't even know where he was going to be going. God didn't, probably didn't give him a GPS or a map or something to use. By verse 9, he says, by faith, he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, their heirs, with him of the same promise. So this continued down through that time where he was going to be going. Verse 10, for he looked for a city which had foundations, whose builder and maker is God. He had complete faith that God was going to do what he promised, to give him that land. Complete faith, no doubt at all. He had faith. 2 Corinthians 5 in verse 7, you don't have to turn there. 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7, it says, for we walk by faith, not by sight, because by faith he has got up and left the land. By faith he left. So he obeyed, went out not knowing anything, what he was going to be going. He did not question God. We don't always know where God is going to be taking us either, brethren, every day. But we must step out on faith that he will lead us where we need to go. We put our trust, our confidence, our faith in God. And Abraham sojourned as he traveled, taking the direction from God. Day by day, God led him that way. That's what he does with us. Hebrews 11, go back to verse 1. We'll see what faith is here. Faith is one of the foundational principles of the Bible. Hebrews 11, verse 1, going back, there's a few verses. Now, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. For by it the elders obtain a good testimony. So faith is the way of life of a Christian. The NLT version reads that faith is the confidence that we will hope is the confidence that what we hope for will actually happen, and it gives us assurance about things that we cannot see. Even though we're hoping for something, we can't really see it, but we have faith that God is going to make it happen for us. It will come about. Again, the definition of faith is the reality of things being hoped for and the proof of things not seen. So you don't hope for things that you already have. You don't hope for something already that's been there. So faith comes before possession. Before you receive what you hope for, you already have it in substance that's called God's faith. Verse 3, he says, through faith we understand that the worlds were framed by the word of God, so that things which are seen were not made of the things that do appear. The NIV says, the universe was formed at God's command, so that what was seen was not made of what was visible. What was visible, what they could actually have seen. So in other words, there's no Big Bang theory going on. Whatever God says he did was going to be happening. We don't see the background that there was other things there. We just believe what he said was going to be a creation. It was created by God's command. It wasn't created by some visible thing. It was from his word. We believe what was going to happen. Proverbs 3 in verse, we won't read all that. Proverbs 3 in verse 5. Proverbs 3 verse 5, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Verse 6, and in all your ways acknowledge him and he shall direct your paths. Again, there's faith. Trusting in God that he will direct our ways. Don't lean on our own understanding about things. Romans chapter 4, verse 17, we'll begin there. We see here that Abraham acknowledged God through his faith. Romans 4 and verse 17. As it is written, I have made you father of many nations, before him whom he believed. Even God quickened the dead, means who gives life to the dead, and call those which cannot as though they were. Now, verse 18, he goes on here speaking about Abraham and Sarah having a child. Verse 18, he says, who against hope believed in hope that he might become the father of many nations, according to that which was spoken, so shall your seed be. Verse 19, and being not weak in faith, he considered not his own body now dead when he was about 100 years old, neither yet the deadness of Sarah's womb. So here we see now 100 years old, his wife is that old, and yet they're going to have a child. And he's saying here, he believed him with this. He had faith in him. Verse 20, he staggered not, neither did he waver or doubt at the promise that God made, the promise of God through unbelief, but rather was strong in faith and giving glory to God. Verse 21, and being fully persuaded, meaning completely assured that what he had promised, he was able to perform in spite of his age. This is going to continue to go on. He promised me something 30 years ago, more than that. Yeah, 30 years ago, 25 years ago. He promised him that he was going to have children after this. And it never came all this time. Yet he believed it was going to happen. Verse 22, and therefore it was imputed to him for righteousness. Now it was not written for his sake alone, but it was imputed to him, but for us also, to whom it shall be imputed, to be accepted as righteous. We will have that as well, if we believe on him that raised up Jesus, the Lord of the dead, who was delivered for our offenses and was raised again for our justification. So like he's saying here, since Abraham believed that it was imputed to him for righteousness, so it will be for us if we believe and have faith in God that he's going to take care of us. He's telling us that what we're to use this example of Abraham and how we're to have a relationship with God, because it was imputed to him and it will be imputed to us as well. The second issue we want to look at, quality being a friend of God. Turn to John chapter 15. The second point we want to look at is that being obedient to God. Being obedient, to be a friend of God. John 15, Jesus tells us what a true friend is. John 15, verse 12 says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. And greater love has no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Verse 14, you are my friends if you do whatever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knows not what the Lord does, but I have called you friends. For all things I have heard of my Father I have made known to you. You have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that you should bring forth fruit, and that your fruit would remain, and for whatever you ask of the Father, he may give it to you. Verse 17, these things I command you, that you love one another. What is this? A commandment of God to love one another, to be friends, to have that kind of love. Now, we're not expected, brethren, to give our lives up for our friends. We're not doing what Jesus did. But the example is for us to see that we're to be there for friends, to give them whatever they need, to provide anything that they need. The Bible gives us instruction on how to live our lives and understand what a friendship is all about. That we're to be in complete obedience to God's instruction. Go back to Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11. We see here more about Abraham. Hebrews 11, verse 17, it says, by faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, and he had received the promises offered up by his only begotten son. Verse 18, of whom it was said, that in Isaac shall your seed be called. Verse 19, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, whence also he had received in a figure. And that figure related to Christ later being raised up himself. So Abraham was tested by offering up his son. God told him to go and offer your son. You know, the one you waited all these years for, and now he's growing up a bit, and I want you to go offer him as a sacrifice. And what did he do? He obeyed God. What a difficult thing to obey. I don't know how many of us would want to go sacrifice our own child because God told us to do that. But he had that kind of obedience and faith in God. Turn over to James chapter 2. James chapter 2, verse 21. At the end of that, of course, with Abraham's son Isaac, he didn't have to sacrifice him, thankfully. God wanted to see, though, as he was testing him, putting him to see, do you really understand what I'm telling you? I'm going to give you an example to do something because I'm going to do this later with my son, Jesus Christ. James chapter 2 and verse 21. It says, was not Abraham our father justified by works, or meaning actions, when he had offered Isaac his son upon the altar? Seeing how faith was working together with his works, or his actions. Faith was working with his obedience. And by his works, or obedience, was faith made perfect. Verse 23, and the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed God, and it was imputed to him for righteousness, and he was called the friend of God. Now, this is the third place why I read it again. The third place that word about Abraham was being a friend of God, used 3 times, that he was the one that was loved by God. So how confident, how much faith do we have in our relationship with God that we must be doing his will? 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2, verse 3. 1 John 2 and verse 3. It says, and hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. Well, if you have a relationship with somebody as a friend, you know them. Well, he says, if we know, hereby we do know that we know him, if we keep his commandments. He that says, I know him, and keeps not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, in him truly is the love of God perfected, and hereby we know that we are him, in him. He that has abided in him ought himself also to walk even as he walked. So we know, how did Abraham walk? In faith and obedience to God. Turn over to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Let's look at an example here about this number that we're looking at here about faith with Abraham. Ecclesiastes chapter 4 and verse 9. Ecclesiastes 4 verse 9, it says, 2 are better than 1, because they have a good reward for their labor. They can do a lot more than just one going out and taking up the crops in the field. And for if they fall, one will be lifted by his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falls, for he has not another to help him up. So it's good to have a friend, someone close by that can be there to help you when you have a problem or something you need. Verse 11, again, and if 2 lie together and they have heat, but how can one be warm alone? If they're together in the wintertime, I don't know how cold it got in Jerusalem, but it was better if they were together in bed where they'd be closer together to be alone, to be warm. Verse 12. And if one prevails against him, 2 shall withstand him. So if someone comes after you and attacks you, 2 that you could defend each other. It continues and says, and a 3-fold cord is not quickly broken. A 3-fold cord. So you have 1 cord, 2 cords, 3 cords that are now put together that they can work together to do something here. Be a lot stronger to have than just the 2 of them. The NLT reads verse 12. New Living Translation reads, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated, but 2 can stand back to back and conquer. And 3 even are better, for a triple braided cord is not easily broken. And Solomon is relating here that the physical benefits of how 2 can help each other as friends. But he also adds at the end how a 3rd one makes it even stronger. What is the 3rd one? He's not talking about just strings here. Talking about a 3rd one that we're together with. Now, when we first got married, Joanne and I, we truly loved each other so very much. We were brought together for a relationship through God. He brought us together. And we were young, and it was a wonderful marriage that we had. That time was just absolutely incredible. And then eventually God called us out of the world and brought us to the truth to be a part of what he was doing. And we finally did really come to understand what this relationship was really like. Because now we were brought into a 3rd individual in our life, which was called God, into our relationship. It wasn't just the two of us. God was now part of us in this relationship. Now, a binding relationship was with God, not with just two people. Now, a number of years ago, we celebrated our Jubilee, or 50th anniversary at the time. And I also want to mention that's a wonderful thing to experience. And congratulations to Mike and Deborah for having a celebration of 50 years. Happy anniversary to you as well. I know what it's like. But when we celebrated that 50-year anniversary, we were away at the beach. And when we got together, we spent a lot of time talking about and relating how important it was that God was part of our relationship. We weren't just there on that 50th anniversary, just the two of us. We kept reminding ourselves that God is with us there every day of our life, our marriage, and together as a family. We have that. God is that third cord that cannot be broken, that's part of us. So when God is the center of friendship, fellowship, or relationships as a marriage is, the union becomes much more meaningful and strengthened in how we react. Turn over to Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, therefore, if you will have any encouragement from being friends with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any common sharing of the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete, and being like-minded, having the same love, being in one spirit and one mind. Do nothing of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interest, but to each of you on the interest of others. How did Christ look to us when he came to die for us? He gave up his life for every one of us that we would be his friends. Verse 4, he says, not looking to your own interest, but to each of you the interest of others. Verse 5, in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used for his own advantage. He didn't say, well, I'm equal with God. We're both together. He's together with God as one. And yet, he didn't take advantage of that. He came down for us. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in the appearance of a man. He humbled himself by being obedient to death, even unto the cross. So true friends have the needs, concern of others rather than themselves. Close friends, brethren, are those that we can share our deepest thoughts with, who will be patient and compassionate. A real friend will recognize and accept that others have imperfections and problems, but yet none of us are without issues that can irritate others. But yet we have God with us, right? I read a definition some years back about being a friend, and it was, a friend is someone who knows all about you, but likes you anyway. I thought that was pretty cute. We want to be sure that we know what a friend is and how we can be good friends with one another, as well as being a friend of God, just like Abraham. Brethren, no one is totally satisfied by anybody else in our lives. Too often our friendships can be superficial, and that we shallow the insincere part. Psalm 91 in verse 1. Psalm 91 and in verse 1, he says here, he that dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. Verse 2, I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge, he is my fortress, my God, in him I will trust. Brethren, we have that confidence in God to be his friend, that confidence that he will help us to be friends with others, that we can have a relationship of concern and love. Let's turn over to a last verse in Ephesians chapter 4. Ephesians chapter 4, and in verse 2. Ephesians 4 and verse 2. And the NLT reads this, always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowance for each other over others' faults because of your love. Don't be negative on things that are going on. Make allowance for each other's faults because of that love. Verse 3, and make every effort to keep yourselves united in spirit, binding yourselves together with peace. Peace is a fruit of God's Spirit. We have God's Spirit that we can be using to have that friendship. Brethren, let's be sure that we're exhibiting God's characteristics of being a friend to each other, having loyalty and love, and to continue that way to live in faith and obedience, that we will become a friend of God.